The auctioneer's gavel cracked against wood like a gunshot, and Zachary Foster felt her heart stop beating as the crowd erupted in laughter at the price called for her indenture. $5. That was all she was worth to these people gathered in the dusty square of Telluride, Colorado on this sweltering August afternoon in 1878. $5 for 7 years of labor to pay off debts her father had left behind when he died in the mine collapse 3 months prior. $5 going once, the auctioneer called out, his voice dripping with contempt as he looked down at Zachary standing on the platform in her threadbare dress, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders because she had no pins left to hold it up. Anyone want a bit higher for this worthless girl? She cannot cook worth a damn, burns everything she touches in the kitchen, cannot sew a straight line. Her own aunt says she has got the disposition of a rattlesnake. More laughter rippled through the crowd. Zachary kept her chin up, refusing to let them see the tears burning behind her eyes. Her aunt stood near the front, arms crossed, looking satisfied that she was finally rid of the burden of her brother's child. Zachary had never been worthless, but her aunt had made sure everyone in town believed it. $5 going twice, the auctioneer continued. $10. The voice came from the back of the crowd, deep and firm, cutting through the jeering like a knife. The crowd parted as a tall man stepped forward. Zachary had seen him around town a few times, always keeping to himself, always looking like he carried the weight of the world on his broad shoulders. Austin Jennings owned the failing ranch 5 miles outside of town, the one everyone whispered about. His father had died 2 years back, leaving him with debts and dying cattle and land that seemed cursed. He was maybe 25 years old, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore dusty work clothes and boots that had seen better days. $10. The auctioneer perked up, sensing potential profit. Well now, Mr. Jennings, that is mighty generous for damaged goods. 15, Austin said, his jaw tight, and I will thank you to show the lady some respect. The crowd went silent. Nobody called Zachary Foster a lady. Nobody had called her anything but worthless for as long as she could remember. Sold, the auctioneer practically shouted, banging his gavel 3 times. To Austin Jennings for $15. The contract is for 7 years of labor or until the debt is paid in full, whichever comes first. Austin stepped up to the platform and held out his hand to help Zachary down. She stared at it for a moment. This calloused hand offered without malice or mockery, then took it. His grip was steady and warm, and when her feet touched the ground, he released her immediately, respecting her space. "Do you have belongings to collect?" he asked quietly. "No, sir," Zachary replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I owned was sold to pay the debts, everything except me." Something flickered across his face, anger maybe, or pity. She hoped it was not pity. She had endured enough of that. "Then we will go," he said. He paid the auctioneer in coins that looked like they hurt to part with, then signed the papers that made Zachary his indentured servant for the next 7 years. She was 19 years old, and her freedom had just been sold for the price of a good saddle. Austin led her to a wagon hitched to 2 tired-looking horses. He helped her up onto the bench seat, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they pulled away from the town square, Zachary could feel dozens of eyes watching, hear the whispers starting up again. The worthless foster girl bought by the cursed Jennings man. They deserved each other, the gossips would say. The ride to the ranch took nearly an hour. Austin did not speak much, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. Zachary found herself studying him from the corner of her eye, trying to understand why he had bid on her contract when everyone in town said his ranch was failing. $15 seemed like a fortune for a man who supposedly could not afford to keep his cattle fed. "Why did you buy my contract?" she finally asked as the ranch came into view. A sprawling property with a house that had seen better days, a barn that leaned slightly to the left, and fences that needed mending everywhere she looked. Austin was quiet for a long moment, guiding the horses up the rutted path to the house. "Because I needed help," he said simply, "and because nobody deserves to be called worthless, especially not in front of the whole town." "But everyone says I am worthless," Zachary said. "My aunt was not lying. I cannot cook without burning things. I cannot sew. I am not good at any of the things women are supposed to be good at." "Can you work hard?" Austin asked, pulling the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "Yes, sir." "Can you learn?" "Yes, sir." "Then you are not worthless," he said firmly. He climbed down from the wagon and offered his hand again. "Welcome to the Jennings Ranch, Miss Foster. It is not much, but it is honest work and honest living." Zachary took his hand and stepped down, looking around at the property with new eyes. It was run down and struggling, yes, but she could see the potential buried under the neglect. The land was beautiful, rolling hills covered in late summer grass, mountains rising in the distance. The house needed paint and the porch needed fixing, but the bones were good. "I should tell you the truth of things," Austin said, leading her toward the house. "I am in debt up to my neck. My father made some bad investments before he died, and I have been trying to dig out ever since. I have got maybe 3 months before the bank forecloses on everything. I bought your contract because I need someone who can help me save this place, and I could not afford anyone else." His honesty caught her off guard. "So we are both desperate then," she said. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I suppose we are." He showed her inside the house, which was exactly as run down inside as it looked outside. Dishes piled in the sink, dust covering every surface, clothes draped over chairs. The home of a man too busy trying to save his ranch to bother with housekeeping. "I know it is a mess," Austin said, running a hand through his hair. "I have been focused on the cattle and the land. The house has suffered for it." "What do you need me to do?" Zachary asked, rolling up her sleeves. Austin looked surprised. "You want to start now? You have had a difficult day." "Every day is difficult," Zachary said. "Might as well make it count for something. You said you need help saving this ranch. Tell me what needs doing." Over the next hour, Austin explained the situation in detail. He had 200 head of cattle, but they were thin and struggling because the grazing land had been overgrazed and the water sources were drying up. He had debts to the bank, to suppliers, to everyone. He needed to get the cattle fattened up and sold within 3 months to have any hope of paying off enough debt to keep the ranch. But he was one man trying to do the work of 10, and he was failing. "I do not need someone to cook and clean," he told her as they stood on the porch looking out over the property. "I mean, those things would be nice, but what I really need is someone who can work the land with me. Someone who is not afraid of hard labor and long days. Someone who can think and solve problems. Can you do that?" Zachary thought about it. Everyone had always told her she was worthless because she could not do the delicate, ladylike things, but nobody had ever asked her to do anything else. "I do not know," she said honestly, "but I want to try." "Then we start tomorrow at dawn," Austin said. "I will show you everything you need to know about running a ranch. Fair warning, it will be harder than anything you have ever done." "Good," Zachary said. "I am tired of being worthless. Show me how to be worth something." That night, Austin gave her the only bedroom in the house and insisted on sleeping in the barn himself, despite her protests. She lay awake on the lumpy mattress, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night, trying not to think about the fact that her entire future rested on saving a failing ranch with a man she had just met. Dawn came early. Zachary woke to the sound of roosters crowing and stumbled out of bed, pulling on the same dress she had worn yesterday because it was the only one she owned. Austin was already up, standing by the barn with 2 horses saddled and ready. "Can you ride?" he asked as she approached. "I used to," Zachary said, "before my father died." "Good. We are going to check the northern grazing lands today. I want to show you the water problem." Zachary mounted the smaller of the 2 horses, a gentle mare named Daisy, and followed Austin out across the property. The early morning air was cool and fresh, the sun just starting to paint the mountains gold. Despite everything, despite the uncertainty and fear, Zachary felt something stirring in her chest that felt almost like hope. Austin led her to the northern section of the ranch, where the land rose into gentle hills. The grass here was sparse and brown, trampled down by too many cattle over too many years. A creek ran through the valley, but it was barely a trickle, the water level so low that rocks jutted out everywhere. "This is the main water source for the northern herd," Austin explained, dismounting and crouching by the creek bed. "But it has been drying up all summer. I think something is blocking it upstream, but I have not had time to investigate. I have been too busy trying to keep the cattle from dying." Zachary slid off her horse and knelt beside the creek, studying the water flow. Her father had been a miner, and she had spent enough time around him to understand how water moved through land, how it could be diverted or blocked. "Can we follow it upstream?" she asked. "It is a full day's ride into the mountains," Austin said, "and I cannot leave the ranch unmanned for that long." "What if I went?" Zachary asked. Austin looked at her in surprise. "Alone, through the mountains? You said you needed someone who could think and solve problems," Zachary said. "You cannot do everything yourself. If I can find out what is blocking the water, maybe we can fix it." "It could be dangerous," Austin warned. "So is letting the cattle die of thirst," Zachary countered. Austin studied her for a long moment, and Zachary saw something shift in his expression. "Respect, maybe. If you are serious about this, I will go with you. We will leave tomorrow at first light and camp overnight. But today, I need to teach you some things first." The rest of that day was a whirlwind of learning. Austin showed her how to check cattle for disease, how to mend fences, how to read the land for signs of problems. He taught her to shoot his rifle, insisting that she needed to know how to protect herself if they were going into the mountains. Zachary's shoulder ached from the recoil, and her hands blistered from fence work, but she refused to complain. For the first time in her life, someone was treating her like she was capable of something more than disappointment. That evening, as the sun set in brilliant oranges and reds, they sat on the porch steps together, exhausted. Austin had cooked beans and hard bread for dinner, and while it was not fancy, it was filling. "You did good work today," Austin said quietly. "Better than good. You learned fast and worked hard. I am grateful for the help." "Thank you for giving me the chance," Zachary said. "Nobody else ever has." "Your aunt was wrong about you," Austin said. "I knew at the moment I saw you on that platform. You have got fire in your eyes. That is not worthless." Zachary felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not know anything about me." Austin was quiet for a moment, staring out at the darkening land. "My father used to tell me that a person's worth is not determined by what they can do for others, but by their willingness to try. You are willing to try, even after everything that has happened to you. That is worth more than any skill." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead. Zachary found herself studying Austin's profile in the fading light, noticing things she had not before. The strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes softened when he talked about the ranch, the gentleness in his hands despite their roughness. He was handsome in a weathered, honest way, and he was kind without expecting anything in return. It made her heart do strange things she was not ready to examine too closely. The next morning, they set out before dawn, riding upstream along the creek bed. Austin had packed supplies for an overnight camp, including bedrolls and food and extra ammunition. The ride was long and steep as they climbed into the mountains, following the diminishing trickle of water through increasingly rocky terrain. They talked as they rode, sharing stories. Austin told her about growing up on the ranch, about his father's slow descent into bad decisions, and debt after his mother had died. Zachary told him about her childhood, about her father's death in the mine collapse and her aunt's immediate rejection. The more they talked, the more Zachary realized how similar they were. Both alone, both fighting against impossible odds, both desperate to prove their worth. By mid-afternoon, they had climbed high enough that pine trees replaced grassland, and the air grew cooler and thinner. The creek bed here showed more water, which confirmed Austin's suspicion that something downstream was blocking the flow. "Look there," Zachary said suddenly, pointing ahead. Through the trees, they could see where the creek widened into a natural pool, and above it, a massive pile of logs and debris completely damming the water. It looked like a beaver dam, but much larger and more chaotic. "Flash flood," Austin said, dismounting to examine the debris. "Probably from the spring melt. All this got washed down and wedged between these rocks. It has been diverting most of the water into that eastern runoff instead of letting it flow down to the ranch." "Can we clear it?" Zachary asked. Austin studied the dam carefully. "It is going to take both of us, and it will be dangerous. If we are not careful, the whole thing could come down on top of us." "Then we will be careful," Zachary said, sliding off Daisy and tying her to a tree. They worked for hours as the sun moved across the sky, using ropes and Austin's axe to carefully dismantle the debris dam. It was backbreaking work, made more dangerous by the water pressure building behind the blockage. Twice, logs shifted unexpectedly and Austin had to pull Zachary back from danger. His hands on her waist were quick and protective, and each time their eyes met afterward, Zachary felt something electric pass between them. Finally, as the sun began to set, they pulled away the last major log. Water burst through the opening with tremendous force, washing away the remaining debris and roaring down the creek bed in a torrent. Austin and Zachary scrambled to higher ground, breathing hard, soaking wet and triumphant. "We did it." Zachary shouted over the rush of water, unable to contain her joy. Austin was laughing, actually laughing, his whole face transformed by it. "You did it," he corrected. "This was your idea. I never would have made the time to come up here without you pushing for it." They stood there dripping and grinning at each other as the creek rushed past, and Zachary felt something shift between them. The way Austin was looking at her, like she was the most remarkable thing he had ever seen, made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with the physical exertion. "We should make camp," Austin said finally, his voice rougher than before. "It will be dark soon." They set up camp a safe distance from the creek, spreading out bedrolls near a small fire Austin built. The temperature dropped quickly as night fell in the mountains, and they huddled close to the flames, eating jerky and hard bread and drinking coffee Austin brewed in a battered pot. "Thank you," Austin said suddenly, "for everything. For working so hard, for caring about saving the ranch even though you have only been here 2 days. You did not have to do any of this." "Yes, I did," Zachary said. "You gave me a chance when nobody else would. You treated me like I mattered. That means everything to me." Austin reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "You do matter, Zachary. Do not ever let anyone tell you otherwise." The use of her first name sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. They were sitting so close now, the firelight dancing across Austin's face, making his eyes look almost silver. Zachary found herself leaning toward him, drawn by something she could not name but desperately wanted to understand. "Austin," she whispered. He closed the distance between them, kissing her gently, questioningly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Zachary did not want to pull away. She leaned into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart pounding as hard as her own. The kiss was sweet and careful and filled with promise, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zachary felt like the world had shifted on its axis. "I am sorry," Austin said immediately. "That was inappropriate. You are bound to me by contract. I should not have taken advantage." "You did not take advantage," Zachary said firmly. "I wanted you to kiss me. I have wanted it since yesterday, if I am being honest." "Zachary, I cannot offer you anything," Austin said, pain in his voice. "I am about to lose everything. It would not be fair to you." "Then we save the ranch," Zachary said. "We work together and we save it, and maybe if we do we can see where this goes, whatever this is." Austin pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as the fire crackled beside them. "I have not felt hope in so long," he admitted. "But when I am with you, I feel like maybe things could work out." "They will work out," Zachary said with more confidence than she felt. "I refuse to be worthless anymore, and I refuse to let you lose this ranch." They held each other through the night, taking turns keeping watch and feeding the fire, talking about everything and nothing. By the time dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Zachary felt like she knew Austin in a way she had never known another person. And the feelings growing in her heart were terrifying and wonderful all at once. The ride back down the mountain was faster than the climb up, and they reached the ranch by mid-afternoon. The change was already visible. The creek running through the northern grazing lands was flowing strong and clear, filling the dried-up water holes. The cattle, sensing the fresh water, were already migrating toward it. Over the next few weeks, Zachary and Austin worked dawn to dusk, transforming the ranch. With the water problem solved, the cattle began to fatten up. Zachary proved to have a natural talent for animal husbandry, noticing when cows showed signs of illness before Austin did, suggesting rotations for the grazing lands that gave the grass time to recover. She still could not cook worth a damn, burning every attempt at bread and overcooking every pot of beans, but Austin did not seem to care. They survived on simple food and hard work, and the growing feeling between them that neither was quite ready to name. At night, after the work was done, they would sit together on the porch, talking and planning. Sometimes Austin would take her hand, or she would lean her head on his shoulder, and these small intimacies felt more precious than anything Zachary had ever known. They had not kissed again since that night in the mountains, both of them aware of the precariousness of their situation, but the wanting was always there, simmering just beneath the surface. 6 weeks after Zachary arrived, a rider came from town with a letter from the bank. Austin's face went pale as he read it. "What is wrong?" Zachary asked. "They moved up the deadline," Austin said, his voice hollow. "I've got 4 weeks instead of 3 months. Someone reported that I am using indentured labor and they think I am trying to cheat them somehow. They want their money now or they are taking the ranch." "Who would report that?" Zachary demanded. "Does it matter?" Austin crumpled the letter in his fist. "I do not have the money. The cattle are not ready to sell yet. We needed more time." Zachary felt panic rising but pushed it down. She had not come this far to give up now. "How much do you need?" Austin told her the number and her heart sank. It was a fortune, more than the cattle would fetch even if they were ready to sell. "There has to be another way," Zachary said. "There is not," Austin said bitterly. "I am sorry, Zachary. I know how hard you have worked. When the bank takes the ranch, your contract will transfer to them. They will probably sell it to someone else." "No," Zachary said fiercely. "I will not let that happen." She spent the next day riding into town, asking questions, making inquiries. The townspeople who had called her worthless were surprised to see her looking healthy and strong, her eyes bright with purpose. She went to the land office, the mining company, anywhere she thought might have information. That evening, she returned to the ranch with news. "There is a mining company looking for access to the North Range," she told Austin excitedly. "They think there might be a silver vein in those mountains where we cleared the dam. They are willing to pay for mineral rights." "I looked into that 2 years ago," Austin said. "My father already sold those rights to pay off other debts." "No, he did not," Zachary said, pulling out papers she had gotten from the land office. "He sold rights to the South Range. The North Range was never included because it was your mother's dowry land. It is protected under different terms. You still own those mineral rights." Austin stared at the papers in disbelief. "Are you sure?" "I checked 3 times," Zachary said. "The mining company will pay enough for the rights to cover your debt and give you breathing room to sell the cattle when they are properly ready. You can save the ranch, Austin." Austin pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "You are incredible," he said. "How did you figure this out?" "My father was a miner," Zachary said. "I know how mineral rights work, and I know how to read land deeds because I used to help him with paperwork. Everyone always said those skills were worthless for a woman, but they just saved your ranch." Austin set her down, his hands cupping her face. "You saved my ranch," he corrected. "You, Zachary Foster, the woman they called worthless, you are the most valuable thing that has ever happened to me." He kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of all the feelings they had been holding back. Zachary kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck, her body pressing against his. This was different from the gentle kiss in the mountains. This was celebration and relief, and the acknowledgement of everything that had been building between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Austin rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I know it has only been a few weeks, and I know you are bound to me by contract, but I love you, Zachary. You are brilliant and strong and everything I never knew I needed." "I love you too," Zachary whispered. "I think I started falling for you the moment you called me a lady on that platform." "Marry me," Austin said. "Not because of the contract, but because I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Because I want to build this ranch with you as my partner, not my servant. Say yes, Zachary." "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The next day, they rode into town together to negotiate with the mining company and settle with the bank. The town gossips nearly choked when they saw Austin and Zachary walking hand in hand, clearly together, clearly in love. The auctioneer who had called her worthless looked like he had swallowed a lemon when Austin announced their engagement. The mining company agreed to pay handsomely for the mineral rights to the North Range, with additional payments if they found the silver vein they suspected was there. Austin paid off the bank in full, tore up Zachary's indenture contract in front of the banker, and used the remaining money to buy supplies for the ranch and a simple gold ring for Zachary's finger. They were married a week later by the circuit preacher who passed through Telluride. Zachary wore a new blue dress that Austin had insisted on buying, and her hair was finally properly pinned with combs he had surprised her with. She had never felt more beautiful or more loved than when Austin slipped that gold ring on her finger and promised to cherish her for the rest of his life. The ranch continued to thrive under their combined efforts. The cattle fattened on the restored grazing lands and brought top dollar when they finally sold them. The mining company found their silver vein and paid bonuses that allowed Austin and Zachary to hire help, expanding the operation. They repaired the house together, painted it white with blue shutters, fixed the porch, and turned it into a real home. Zachary's aunt came calling once, clearly expecting to benefit from her niece's change in fortune. Zachary met her at the property line on horseback, looking down at the woman who had called her worthless. "You are not welcome here," Zachary said calmly. "You made your choice when you sold my contract for debts that were not even real. My father's estate covered everything he owed. You just wanted to be rid of me." Her aunt sputtered protests, but Zachary cut her off. "I am not the worthless girl you described to that auctioneer," Zachary continued. "I am Zachary Jennings, and I helped save this ranch. I found the water source, negotiated the mineral rights, and built this life with my husband. You have no part in it." She rode back to the ranch without looking back, and her aunt never returned. A year after their wedding, Zachary stood on the porch of their now beautiful home, one hand resting on her swollen belly, watching Austin work with the new ranch hands they had hired. The property had expanded to include another 100 acres, and they were now one of the most successful ranches in the county. The same people who had laughed at her on the auction block now tipped their hats respectfully when she rode into town. Austin looked up from his work and caught her watching. The smile that spread across his face still made her heart skip. He handed off the rope he was holding to one of the hands and jogged over to the porch. "You should be resting," he scolded gently, but his hands went immediately to her belly, feeling for the baby's movements. "I am tired of resting," Zachary said. "The doctor says the baby will not come for another month." "Our son needs his mother healthy," Austin said, kissing her forehead. "Or our daughter," Zachary teased. "You do not know it is a boy." "I know," Austin said confidently. "A father knows these things." Zachary laughed and pulled him down for a proper kiss. Even after more than a year of marriage, the spark between them had not dimmed. If anything, it had grown stronger as they built their life together. "You ever regret it?" Austin asked quietly. "Marrying me, staying here, all of it. You could have insisted on your freedom and gone anywhere, done anything." "This is freedom," Zachary said firmly. "Being with you, building this ranch, creating our family. This is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know enough to want it. You gave me that, Austin. You saw worth in me when nobody else did." "You gave yourself worth," Austin corrected. "I just gave you the opportunity. You did everything else." They stood together on the porch as the sun began to set, painting the ranch in golden light. The land that had been dying when Zachary arrived was now green and thriving. The cattle were fat and healthy. The house was warm and welcoming. And Zachary herself had transformed from the girl everyone called worthless into a woman of substance and strength. A month later, on a warm September evening, Zachary gave birth to a healthy baby boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's determined eyes. They named him James after Austin's father, but with the hope that he would make better choices than his grandfather had. Austin held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. I do not deserve this happiness." "Yes, you do," Zachary said firmly from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "We both do. We fought for it, and we earned it." As the years passed, the ranch continued to prosper. Zachary and Austin added 2 more children to their family, a daughter they named Rose after Austin's mother, and another son they called Daniel. Zachary proved to be as fierce and loving a mother as she was a rancher, teaching her children from an early age that worth was not given but earned through hard work and good character. She still could not cook worth a damn, which became a family joke. They hired a woman from town to do the cooking, and Zachary focused her talents where they were actually useful, managing the business side of the ranch and expanding their operations. She had a gift for numbers and negotiations that made the ranch even more successful than Austin had dreamed possible. The townspeople who had once mocked her came to respect and even admire her. Young women sought her advice, wanting to know how she had transformed her life so completely. Zachary always told them the same thing. Do not let anyone else define your worth. Find what you are good at and work harder than anyone else. The world will tell you no 1,000 times, but it only takes one yes to change everything. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Austin surprised her with a gift. He had commissioned a portrait of her standing on the ranch land, looking strong and capable, her hair blowing in the wind. Underneath, the artist had inscribed a single word at Austin's request: priceless. They called you worthless, Austin said as they looked at the portrait together. But you were always priceless. You just needed someone to see it. We saw it in each other, Zachary corrected, taking his hand. You were struggling and alone, and everyone said you would fail, but you did not. We did not. We saved each other. That night, with their children asleep upstairs and the ranch quiet around them, Austin and Zachary sat on the porch as they had done countless times before. The property stretched out before them in the moonlight, beautiful and prosperous, a testament to what two desperate people could build when they refused to give up. You remember that first day? Austin asked. When I brought you here and the place was falling apart. I remember thinking you were crazy for buying my contract when you could barely afford to feed yourself, Zachary said with a laugh. Best $15 I ever spent, Austin said, pulling her close. I was worth more than that, Zachary teased. You were worth everything, Austin said seriously. You are worth everything. You saved this ranch, Zachary. You saved me. We saved each other, Zachary repeated, and we built something beautiful together. 20 years after that day on the auction block, Zachary Jennings stood in the same town square in Telluride, but everything was different. She was there for the dedication of a new school, funded partially by a donation from the Jennings ranch. She wore a fine dress now, her hair properly done, a successful businesswoman and rancher who commanded respect wherever she went. The mayor gave a speech praising her generosity and business acumen. Young girls in the crowd looked at her with admiration. Her 3 children stood with Austin at the front, all of them proud of what their mother had accomplished. But as Zachary looked around the square, she remembered the terrified girl who had stood on that platform, listening to a crowd laugh at her worthlessness. She remembered the shame and fear and desperate hope that somehow something would change, and it had changed. Because one man had seen past what everyone else claimed she was and given her a chance to show what she could become. After the ceremony, as they walked back to their wagon, Austin took her hand. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how one day can change everything," Zachary said. "About how the worst day of my life led to the best life I could have imagined. No regrets then." Austin asked with a smile. "Not a single one," Zachary said, standing on her toes to kiss him. "You bought the girl they called worthless, and I became the woman who saved your ranch. But more than that, we became partners in every sense of the word. We became a family. We became home for each other. Forever," Austin promised, the same promise he had made the day they married, the same promise he renewed every day through his actions and his love. "Forever," Zachary agreed. Their eldest son, James, had grown into a fine young man of 20. already taking on more responsibilities at the ranch, and showing the same combination of his mother's business sense and his father's work ethic. Rose, at 17, had her mother's determination and was already talking about expanding their operations into horse breeding. Young Daniel, 15, had inherited his mother's gift with numbers and was helping Zachary manage the books. The ranch now employed 15 full-time hands and seasonal workers during roundup and calving season. They had expanded to over 1,000 acres, with diversified operations including cattle, horses, and even a small dairy operation that Rose managed. The mining company still paid them royalties from the silver vein, which continued to produce. But more important than the financial success was the family they had built and the example they set. Austin and Zachary had created a partnership based on mutual respect, hard work, and genuine love. They had shown their children and everyone who knew them that worth was not determined by birth or circumstances, but by character and determination. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Austin organized a celebration at the ranch. Neighbors came from miles around, employees and their families, friends from town, even the banker who had once threatened foreclosure. The ranch that had been dying when Zachary arrived was now the social and economic center of the community. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Austin and Zachary found themselves alone on the porch once again, just as they had been so many times over the years. Their hair was touched with gray now, their hands marked by years of hard work, but the love between them burned as bright as ever. 25 years, Zachary mused. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday I stepped down from that auction platform. Other times it feels like a whole different lifetime. It was a different lifetime, Austin said. We are not those desperate, broken people anymore. We built something better. We did, Zachary agreed. And we are still building. Rose wants to expand the horse operation. James is talking about buying the Anderson property to the south when it goes up for sale. Daniel is developing a new bookkeeping system that he thinks will help us track profits more efficiently. Austin laughed. Our children inherited your ambition. And your stubbornness, Zachary added with a smile. Austin pulled her close and they swayed gently to music only they could hear. I love you, Zachary Jennings. More today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today. I love you too, Zachary said. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for believing in me when nobody else did. Thank you for giving me the chance to become who I was meant to be. Thank you for saving my ranch, Austin said. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for giving me a life better than I ever dreamed possible. They stood together under the stars, the ranch quiet around them, the land they had saved and built together stretching out in the darkness. It was a peace earned through years of hard work, a happiness built on genuine partnership and love. Inside the house, their children were already making plans for the future. James was sketching out ideas for the Anderson property acquisition. Rose was studying bloodlines for the horses she wanted to breed. Daniel was running numbers, calculating profits and projections. The next generation was ready to take what Austin and Zachary had built and make it even greater. But they would do it with the values their parents had instilled. Hard work, honesty, seeing worth in people and situations others overlooked, and never giving up even when circumstances seemed impossible. In town, the story of Zachary Jennings had become legend. Young women especially loved to hear how the worthless girl had become the woman who saved the Jennings ranch, how she had transformed not just her own life but her husband's, how they had built an empire together from nothing but determination and love. The auctioneer who had sold her contract for $15 had died years ago, but his son still remembered the day with shame. He had apologized to Zachary once, years later, telling her that his father had regretted his cruelty. Zachary had accepted the apology graciously, because she had learned that carrying anger only weighed you down. Better to focus on building something good than dwelling on past wrongs. Zachary's aunt had also passed, bitter and alone, never having reconciled with the niece she had wronged. Zachary had felt sadness at the news, not for herself but for her aunt, who had let prejudice and cruelty rob her of the chance to know her remarkable niece and grand-nieces and nephews. As Zachary and Austin grew older, they gradually turned more of the daily operations over to their children, though they never truly retired. The ranch was too much a part of them, too central to who they were. But they found time for other things too, traveling occasionally, spending time with their growing number of grandchildren, supporting various causes in the community. Zachary became particularly passionate about helping young women in difficult circumstances, remembering all too well what it felt like to be called worthless and unwanted. She established a program through the ranch that offered training and employment to young women who needed a fresh start, teaching them skills that would allow them to support themselves with dignity. Austin supported her fully in this as in everything, often saying that helping others find their worth the way Zachary had found hers was the best use of their success. Their love story became the stuff of local legend, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But those who knew them personally knew that the real story was even better than the legend, because it was built on genuine respect, partnership, and a love that only deepened with time. On Austin's 50th birthday, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Their 3 children were all there with their own families now. James and his wife had given them 4 grandchildren. Rose had married a horse trainer from Denver, and they had twin boys. Daniel had recently gotten engaged to a schoolteacher from town. As Austin looked around at his family, all of them gathered in the home he and Zachary had built, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "I want to say something," he announced, standing up and raising his glass. The room quieted. 27 years ago, I stood in the town square and bid on an indenture contract because I was desperate for help saving this ranch. I paid $15 for 7 years of labor from a young woman the whole town called worthless. He looked at Zachary, his eyes shining. But I did not get 7 years of labor. I got a partner, a wife, a mother to my children, and the love of my life. I got the woman who not only saved this ranch but made it everything it is today. I got more than I ever deserved, and I have spent every day since trying to be worthy of it. Zachary stood and went to him, taking his hand. "You gave me worth when I thought I had none," she said. "You saw potential where others saw failure. You gave me not just a chance but respect and love. Everything we built together. This ranch, this family, this life, it belongs to both of us equally." Their children and grandchildren applauded, and Austin kissed his wife tenderly, not caring who was watching. After all these years, she still made his heart race. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows as they always do. They lost friends, celebrated births and marriages, weathered economic downturns and drought years. Through it all, Austin and Zachary faced everything together, their partnership only growing stronger with each challenge overcome. On their 40th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in a simple ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Zachary wore the same blue dress from their wedding, carefully preserved all these years. It was a little tight now, and her hair was more gray than dark, but to Austin, she was more beautiful than ever. I, Austin Jennings, take you, Zachary Jennings, to continue being my wife, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life," Austin said, his voice strong despite his 70 years. "For 40 years you have been my everything. I promise to love you for however many years we have left, just as fiercely as I have loved you for the past 40. Zachary smiled through tears. "I, Zachary Jennings, take you, Austin Jennings, to continue being my husband, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. You saw worth in a worthless girl and gave her the chance to become more than she ever dreamed. I promise to love you forever in this life and whatever comes next." They were well into their 70s when Austin's health began to fail. He had lived a hard life of physical labor, and his body finally started giving out. But even as his strength faded, his love for Zachary never did. She nursed him with the same fierce determination she had brought to saving the ranch all those years ago. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset over land they had saved and built together, Austin took her hand. "No regrets?" he asked, echoing the question he had asked so many times over the years. "Not a single one," Zachary said firmly. "Every day with you was a gift." "The ranch is in good hands," Austin said. "The children know what to do. You have built something that will last for generations." "We built it," Zachary corrected. "Together. Always together." Austin smiled. "Always together," he agreed. He lived another 5 years, long enough to see all his grandchildren grown and his great-grandchildren thriving. Long enough to know that everything he and Zachary had built would continue after they were gone. Long enough to tell his wife he loved her one more time. When Austin passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 77, with Zachary holding his hand, she grieved deeply but without bitterness. They had had more than 45 years together, had built an incredible life, had loved each other truly and well. Not everyone got that kind of blessing. Zachary lived another 10 years after Austin's death, remaining active in the ranch operations and her various charitable endeavors until the very end. She spent time with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and the early days of the ranch. She made sure they all knew the story of how she had been called worthless and how Austin had seen something different. "Your worth is not determined by what others say about you," she told them. "It is determined by what you do with the opportunities you are given, how hard you work, and how you treat others. Your grandfather taught me that, and it is the most valuable lesson I can pass on to you." When Zachary finally passed in her sleep at the age of 87, the whole town of Telluride mourned. The girl they had once called worthless had become one of the most respected and beloved figures in the community. Her funeral was attended by hundreds, and the stories shared celebrated a life well lived and love well earned. She was buried next to Austin on a hill overlooking the ranch they had saved together, under a headstone that read, "Zachary Foster Jennings, beloved wife, mother, grandmother." She was never worthless. She was priceless. The Jennings Ranch continued to thrive for generations, passed down through their children and grandchildren, each generation adding their own improvements while honoring the foundation Austin and Zachary had laid. The story of how the ranch was saved became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. And in Telluride, the story lived on too. The worthless girl and the failing rancher who had bet everything on each other and won. Who had built not just a successful ranch but a genuine partnership, a true love story, and a legacy that lasted far beyond their own lives. Their story became a reminder that worth is not inherent or given, but discovered and earned. That love can bloom even in the most unlikely circumstances. That two people working together can overcome impossible odds. And that sometimes, The best investments are the ones everyone else thinks are worthless. In the end, Austin had paid $15 for a 7-year labor contract and received a lifetime partnership worth more than all the silver in the mountains. And Zachary, called worthless by everyone who knew her, had proven her worth beyond any measure, saving not just a ranch but building a dynasty, raising a family, and living a love story that would be remembered for generations. They had saved each other, those two desperate souls who met on an auction block in 1878. And in saving each other, they had created something beautiful and lasting and true. A love that transcended circumstance, a partnership that built an empire, and a legacy that would endure long after they were both gone. The ranch still stands today, the descendants of Austin and Zachary continuing the work they started. The values they instilled, the lessons they taught, the example they set, all of it lives on. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun sets over the Colorado mountains, painting the ranch in golden light just as it did all those years ago, you can almost see them there on the porch, hands intertwined, looking out over everything they built together. Two people who the world had written off as worthless and doomed to fail, who instead built something priceless and destined to last. Their story proves that worth is not about where you start, but about what you do with the chances you are given. And that true love, the kind built on respect and partnership and genuine care, can overcome any obstacle and last beyond death itself. This was the legacy of Austin Jennings and Zachary Foster Jennings. Proof that worth is earned, not given, that love conquers all, and that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unlikely beginnings. Their story ended, as all stories must, but what they built together, the love they shared, and the example they set continues forever.